So you have learned how to use the state hook in React. Now in React, we have another built-in hook called useRef that we can use to reference a DOM element. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how we can use this hook to reference an input field and read its value when our form is submitted. So first we press enter to import it on the top. Then we call this hook or this function and give it an initial value. The common practice is to pass null here. Now this returns a reference object, so we can store it in a constant. I'm going to call this nameRef because we need another reference object to reference the age field. Now we need to associate this reference object with this input field right here. So we set its ref attribute to nameRef. Now finally, when our form is submitted, instead of logging submitted, let's log nameRef. Now this object has a single property that is current, and this returns the DOM element we are referencing. So back to the browser, let's submit the form. All right, here's our input field, right? Now you know that in HTML, all input fields have a value property. So instead of logging nameRef.current, let's log the value property. Now here we have a compilation error saying nameRef.current is possibly null. So here we need to do a null check. If nameRef.current is not null, then we log its value. Now we have another compilation error saying property value does not exist on type never. The reason we get this error is because the TypeScript compiler doesn't know that we are referencing an HTML input element. Because using the ref hook, we can reference any kind of element in the DOM, not necessarily input fields. We can reference a button, a heading, a list, and so on. So to tell the TypeScript compiler that we are referencing an HTML input element, here when calling this hook, we type angle brackets and type HTML input element. This is one of the standard interfaces defined in all browsers that represents an HTML input element. Now the error is gone away. So let's type some name here like John and submit the form. There you go. Now we need to repeat the same steps for the age field. So first we create a new reference object and specify HTML input element as the type of the target element. Now just like before, we initialize this with null and get a new reference object. So let's call this ageRef. Next, we need to associate this with the age input field. It's right here. So we set the ref attribute to ageRef. And finally, when submitting the form, first we check if ageRef.current is not null, then we log ageRef.current.value. Let's test our form. So John 30, submit. Okay, beautiful. Now, typically when submitting a form, we need to send an object to the server to be saved. So instead of logging individual values, let's first create an object called person with two properties, name which we initialize to an empty string and age which we initialize to 0. Then over here, instead of logging this on the console, we set person.name to nameRef.current.value. And similarly, here we set person.age to ageRef.current.value. Now here we have a compilation error because we have defined the age property as a number, but the value property returns a string. So here we need to call parseInt to convert the string to a number. And finally, as the last step, we log the person object on the console. So let's try one more time. John 30, submit. Beautiful. So this is the object that we're potentially going to send to the server to be saved. Now, one last thing before we finish this lesson. You might be wondering why we have to initialize every ref object with null. Well, you know that the current property of a ref object references a DOM node. Now, the initial value that we pass here will be used to set the current property. Now, here's the thing. Initially, when we create a ref object, we don't have access to a DOM node because the DOM is created after React renders our component. So we really have no initial value to provide here. When React renders our component and creates the DOM, it will set the current property to a DOM node, and it will set it back to null when the node is removed from the screen. So the current property should either be null or reference an existing DOM node. If we don't supply an initial value here, the current property will be undefined, and this can cause unexpected issues down the road. This is why we should always initialize our ref objects with null. Now, in my opinion, this is a design issue in React because explicitly initializing every ref object with null is kind of ugly. This responsibility should have been pushed to the ref hook itself. So if we don't supply an initial value, the ref hook itself should initialize the current property to null. But it is what it is, so we have to stick with it.